Welcome to Learn About Law. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law, and today we're going to discuss special needs trusts. These are also known as supplemental needs trusts. The purpose of a special needs trust is for someone who has disabilities and is receiving government benefits from either Social Security or Medicaid or any other government program. Many of those government programs require that the individual receiving the benefits has less than $2,000 in assets and has income on a monthly basis that's less than a certain standard. If you have more assets than $2,000 or more income than whatever threshold the government program sets, then your benefits are going to be reduced accordingly, and you might no longer be eligible, or they might just simply be reduced on a monthly basis depending on how much income you have over that threshold. So the purpose of a special needs trust is to allow you to amass assets and have a standard of living that does not negatively affect your government benefits. And here's how it works. So we will create a bank account that's owned by a trust, and there's going to be a trustee that's a different person from the disabled individual that's receiving the benefits. And all of the disabled individual's income should go into this trust and into the bank account owned by the trust. Real estate can be owned by the trust as well. Any type of asset can be owned by the trust. And any gifts from parents or inheritances from parents should go into the trust as well. And as long as those items, the income, gifts, inheritances, go directly into the trust or an account owned by the trust, then they won't count as assets for the purpose of receiving Social Security benefits. So you can have an account owned by your special needs trust with $100,000 in it, but as long as you've got less than $2,000 outside of the special needs trust, you can continue to receive your Social Security benefits. And again, you can make $100,000 a year if you want off of your job and put it directly into your special needs trust and still receive your monthly Social Security benefit payment, because that income doesn't count against you as long as it goes into the special needs trust. There's a couple drawbacks. One is that the trustee has to be someone other than the disabled individual receiving the benefits. So that's not too much of a hassle. You usually name a sibling or a parent or a family member or a friend that can disperse the assets for you when you need them. The second drawback is that the assets can't be spent on groceries or rent. So housing and food are supposed to be what the government benefits you're receiving are for. So if they're spent on groceries or rent, those assets will negatively impact your government benefits. But they can be spent on going to restaurants, going on vacations, buying televisions, doing whatever else you need to do to have a standard of living that you would otherwise have if you weren't relying on receiving these government benefits. One thing that's really important is that parents incorporate the special needs trust into their own estate plan. So if you have a disabled child and you pass away either without a will or a trust, or with a will or a trust that leaves an inheritance directly to the child with special needs, then if that child inherits more than $2,000, they're going to have more than $2,000 in assets, and they will either have to disclaim the inheritance or forfeit their government benefits. The solution to that is to have one of these special needs trusts, and in your own estate plan as a parent, to leave the share that would normally go to that child, rather than leaving it to their individual name, leave it to their special needs trust. Then from your estate plan, it'll flow directly into that special needs trust and not negatively impact their government benefits. Another question I get a lot is there's an ABLE Act, something called an ABLE Act, ABLE, that is going to be coming into play here pretty soon in Illinois. It hasn't been signed into law yet, but it contemplates having a special type of financial account that will not, like a special needs trust account, will not negatively impact government benefits. After looking into the ABLE Act a little bit and what we expect it to say, we don't know exactly what the law is going to be, but it looks like it's going to be something that is going to be used in conjunction with the special needs trust, not instead of one. The downside of an ABLE Act is that an ABLE Act account, unlike a special needs trust, you can't spend the money on basically anything but groceries and rent. It has to be something relating to the individual's disability. So that would include groceries or rent. So what I would recommend is to have an ABLE Act account with some money in it to pay for things like making your home disability accessible, your groceries, your rent, and then have a separate account owned by the special needs trust that can pay for everything else, like vacations, entertainment, luxuries in your home, like a big screen television, whatever you want to do. But the two different accounts have to have different limitations on what they can be spent on. The other difference between the ABLE Act and a special needs trust is there's going to be limitations on how much the account can hold. Now, I hear that it's going to be $100,000 is going to be the limit to what is going to be held by the ABLE Act account. There's also annual limitations on what can go into the account and individualized gift limitations. Whereas with the special needs trust, you can put as much as you want into the account, and the account can grow as much as you like. The special needs trust can also hold any sort of property. So you can put real estate into the account. You can put, basically anything you can dream up of can be owned by the trust. Whereas an ABLE Act account is just a savings account, so it can't own other types of property. So usually I would recommend meeting with an attorney and coming up with a strategy that suits your individual needs to use both the ABLE Act account when it becomes available and a special needs trust to have a cohesive strategy for making sure that your loved one with disabilities, or yourself if you have disabilities, can have a really good standard of living without reducing their government benefits. So if you found this helpful, you can find more podcasts, more videos, and a lot more articles at learn-about-law.com. I also do another podcast called seizeyourbusiness.com, where I interview business owners about strategies that are making their business successful. If you'd like to schedule an initial consultation, you can call me at 630-324-6666. That's 630-324-6666, or just go to o'flaherty-law.com and you can find out a lot more about us on our website. Thanks for listening.